This video contains spoilers for the Untamed.
我要打断你的狗腿！打断他的腿？我不是和你说过，凡是用夷陵老祖邪术的，直接杀了，喂你的狗。
The Untamed, or 陈情令, is based on the novel 魔道祖师 by 莫向统秀. It is the story of Wei Wuxian, a Taoist magician who, by a combination of curiosity and circumstance, pursues a darker and subversive path of magic. This causes him to become a deviant among his peers, an outcast from his family, and a pariah in polite society. The concept of a magical deviant as a psychic projection of societal anxieties may be as old as humankind. In early modern Western history in particular, with the rise of Christianity, this figure was crystallized as the witch. As popular fears evolved, so did the witch figure, which stands the reason that the definitions, imagery, and connotations around witchcraft have evolved and diverged. The witch occupies a murky intersection between history, popular belief, myth, and real-life practice. And across cultures and subcultures, no one idea of the witch is the same. However, I do think the witch archetype is a useful way to analyze Wei Wuxian and his character journey, especially in relation to the story's themes of rebelliousness and alienation. Now, before we begin, I anticipate some people might object to me applying the witch archetype to Wei Wuxian, and it's true enough that the witch is commonly imagined as a woman and is often a useful perspective for exploring the horrors of womanhood. However, it's simply not historically accurate in both popular belief and real-life practice that the witch was only a woman. Men have been accused of witchcraft alongside women throughout history, and some of the most foundational real-life witches have been men. I also find this gender exclusivity a bit restrictive, since it keeps us from exploring other kinds of subversiveness in other cultural contexts, like different expressions of masculinity in Chinese society. I can also already hear people saying in the comments that I'm projecting an essentially Western archetype on the creation of a Chinese author. First, as I've said before, a devious magical being as a way to discuss popular fears is not unique in Western cultures, even if they are not explicitly called a witch as such. In addition, I don't think we can dismiss the transmission of Western concepts into other cultures and vice versa. I mean, Wei Wuxian's birthday is canonically on Halloween, a Western holiday. So it's not implausible that Mo Xiangtongxiu was inspired by the trope of the witch to discuss certain issues in Chinese society. And besides that, Chinese culture isn't completely devoid of the idea of a witch. Women still get accused of being witches in some rural regions of China. And there is a family of Chinese folk magic known as Wu shamanism, which is commonly associated with negative stigma. Well, Benabel Wen might disagree with me.
There really isn't a witch equivalent in East Asian occult philosophy.
But anyone else who knows more on the topic should feel free to weigh in the comments. Now that that's out of the way, let's begin. In his book, The Witch, A History of Fear from Ancient Times to the Present, Ronald Hutton outlines 5 characteristics to the witch figure across history and cultures. First, the witch causes harm by uncanny means. Hutton makes the observation that human beings traditionally have great trouble coping with the concept of random chance. People tend on the whole to want to assign occurrences of remarkable good or bad luck to agency, either human or superhuman. It stands the reason that fears of witchcraft often worsen in times of social and economic stress. This goes hand in hand with the second characteristic, which is that the witch is a threat to the community. Witches have generally been imagined as threats to neighbors, peers, and sometimes authority figures within a community. Those most under suspicion are individuals who have failed to show loyalty to the community, antisocial individuals, marginalized persons, or outsiders who have settled within the community. In other words, suspicion of witchcraft has generally been one consequence of unmet social obligations. In the story, Wei Wuxian rises to prominence during the Sunshot Campaign, a war in which all the major Taoist cultivation clans band together to defeat one clan that was overreaching its power, the Wen clan. The war leaves behind a power vacuum, which the affluent Jin clan is eager to fill. Initially, Wei Wuxian is celebrated for his heroism in the war, but then invites suspicion when he begins to flout the norms and conventions held by his peers. For instance, he stops carrying a sword, as all cultivators are expected to do. All the cultivators are expected to shun any disempowered survivors from the Wen clan, their former enemy. He chooses to help and shelter them instead. As a result, he becomes a scapegoat for much of what goes wrong in that society. The third characteristic is that the witch works within a tradition. The general consensus is that the witch acquires their power either through something innate to themselves or from the employment of magical materials, sometimes taken from the natural world, or sometimes from the bodies of their victims. The fourth characteristic is that the witch is evil. Witches are feared, and what makes them most terrifying is that their actions against their victims are taken surreptitiously. According to Ronald Hutton, the element of secrecy was considered to deprive the intended victim of any warning to the coming attack or consciousness of what was happening until the harm had been done. It was designed to prevent any opportunity for compromise, negotiation, and reconciliation, and for defensive measures, and to shield the witch as far as possible from being called to account for the crime. The exact definition of evil varies from society to society, but it is almost always encapsulated by everything that opposes a society's conventional structures and mores. In these senses, the witch figure has represented an attempt to imagine how human beings can continue to live within communities while secretly rejecting and attacking all of their moral constraints, striking at all the imperatives that bind their societies together and make them functional. In societies where the expression of aggression and resentment is customarily repressed in the name of communal solidarity and harmony, the witch figure provided a kind of human being whom it was not only proper but necessary to hate actively and openly. Instead of using the conventional magic utilized by the other cultivators, who are essentially fantasy Taoist ceremonial magicians, Wei Wuxian invents a potent new form of magic known as demonic cultivation. Instead of a sword, he utilizes his flute and the yin tiger talisman, a tool he creates, to harness resentment energy from the dead, as well as raising the dead to perform his will. This magic is taboo in the conventional cultivation world, who prioritize the exorcism and suppression of resentful spirits. After he helps the displaced remnants of the Wen clan escape and settle in the burial mounds, a notoriously ghost-infested place, he becomes something of a legend and boogeyman in all of society for years, so much so that expectations of his activities and capabilities are blown out of proportion. When Jin Zixun, a member of the Jin clan, suffers from a potent curse, he accuses Wei Wuxian without evidence, and everyone believes him, regardless of any logical defense Wei Wuxian might offer. After all, he is the most potent user of deviant magic that anyone knows. His community also rewrites their narrative about who he is and always was, weaponizing his social status in the process. In their minds, he was always a malicious individual, taking advantage of the kindness of the family that took him in as an orphan. And the fifth characteristic is that the witch can be resisted. The world is full of methods to resist and suppress witchcraft, from talismans to protective rituals to witch doctors. There is also the practice of pressuring the witch to remove any magic they allegedly performed, or all-out legal action, often rigged against the accused, intimidation, or physical attack. As stated before, witchcraft accusations often go through an upsurge during times of economic, political, and cultural change. According to Hutton, when such an upsurge has occurred, it has tended to rebound on the social order in 3 different ways: to confirm the authority of the traditional leaders in society, to enhance the power of an individual member of the traditional elite, or to enable a new social group to seize authority. Accusations of witchcraft can articulate otherwise unspeakable fantasies, reveal and represent destructive impulses, and identify and express tensions within families and wider social groups, blasting away unsustainable relationships. In the eyes of the elite, Wei Wuxian's greatest crime is not that he practices a deviant form of magic, but that he openly exposes their hypocrisies and forces them to confront these flaws. His power grows so much so that Jin Guangshan, the patriarch of the Jin clan, tries to pressure Wei Wuxian to turn in his Yin Tiger talisman in the name of security, but in fact covets it for himself, regardless of the moral implications of its magic. But of course, he doesn't take this accusation very well. To weaken his competition, he eventually weaponizes the tension in the relationship between Wei Wuxian and Jiang Cheng, his adopted brother and inexperienced leader of the Jiang clan, such that Jiang Cheng is pressured into rejecting any association with someone who was close to him and could have supported him. When events escalate with deadly consequences, Jin Guangshan leads an army to confront Wei Wuxian. While this confrontation is set up like a trial, it is in reality a kangaroo court. No defense or reasoning Wei Wuxian can offer matters. He is set up to fail, so that his rivals can do what they always set out to do: to destroy him. The stigma surrounding Wei Wuxian's magic is akin to the very real tension between Western ceremonial magic and folk magic. There were magic practices common to early modern Europe, which were sanctioned by the elite, so long as they differentiated their practice from so-called low magic, folk magic, and witchcraft. Major apologists and theorists for ceremonial magic like Robert Turner and Cornelius Agrippa asserted that their magic was performed in the service of the one true God, while witchcraft was produced in a pact with the devil. Ronald Hutton writes that the self-image of such magicians in the medieval and early modern periods drew on the established ideals of the clerical, monastic, and scholarly professions, representing themselves as part of the elite of pious and learned men. Hence, ceremonial magic became revered, while practitioners of folk magic traditions became demonized. The demonization of unorthodox spiritualities is also present in the stigma around the voodoo religion, which was created by the descendants of enslaved Africans in Haiti who were converted to Roman Catholicism in the 1500s and 1600s. Historically, voodoo was an emancipatory faith that enslaved peoples turned to when brutalized by their oppressors, and inspired the slave revolts against Haiti's French colonizers. Unsurprisingly, voodoo became regarded with fear and was labeled black magic, a heavily racialized term. As mentioned earlier, there is a family of shamanism in China known as Wu shamanism. During the Song and Ming dynasties, the Neo-Confucianist movement led to a large decline in shamanism, as it was considered uncivilized and disorderly. It bears note that Taoism, which has some of its roots in shamanism, inspired many rebellions and insurrections throughout history. Many of their leaders were secret societies of Taoist ceremonial magicians. The I Ching itself was created to make change in the world. Taoist magicians have also been subjected to persecution, especially during the Cultural Revolution, and still are persecuted today. Like rebellious voodoo and Taoist sorcerers, Wei Wuxian understands the power of pain. He understands that pain can be productive. Pain can change the world. The magic he creates, demonic cultivation, is based on the use of resentment energy, the unresolved pain of the dead, and it is hard not to see the parallels between his practice and the necromancy and baneful magic employed by voodoo priests. Just as Taoist secret societies and voodoo practitioners use their magic to defeat authority figures, Wei Wuxian uses his magic to both defeat the oppressive Wen clan and also to protect members of the Wen clan who suffer war atrocities. Wei Wuxian's magic also shows commoners born outside of the magical elite an accessible, alternate way of excelling in magic. In order to practice magic within the orthodox system, a cultivator must possess a golden core, which can only be cultivated once, and is strongest when the cultivator starts developing it from a young age, and even then, only if they have access to the right educational resources. So by nature, the magical orthodoxy is elitist and self-selects for those who were born into the right families with the right resources and access. To practice demonic cultivation, Wei Wuxian does not need to use his golden core, and as we learn later, cannot. Like many folk magicians, his magic is very experimental and deeply practical. The original enslaved practitioners of voodoo did not have the herbs of their homeland at hand, and simply adapted to using those of the lands they were enslaved in. Wei Wuxian does not need the expensive tools used by his peers, but simply knows how to use what he has available, making his magic very versatile and adaptable to different situations.
有没有空白的符篆？哎呀，画过的也可以。
Because of this accessibility, Wei Wuxian sparks a following of curious amateurs as well as a few copycats. As was the case with folk magic, his practice threatens the structures that keep the sanctioned magical establishment in power, who then try to claim his magical tools in order to affirm their monopoly on magic, while posing themselves as a moral authority over him. In a sense, Wei Wuxian represents a democratization of magic. Magic is not only the realm of the privileged and the elite, but also of the common people, making do with what they have. The witch has been reinterpreted many times in myth, literature, and pop culture, sometimes as a figure of terror, sometimes of inspiration, and sometimes both. Ultimately, the witch is free. In her book, Waking the Witch, Pam Grossman writes, "The witch owes nothing. Witches have power on their own terms. They have agency. They create. They commune with the spirit realm, freely and free of any mediator. They metamorphose and they make things happen. They are change agents whose primary purpose is to transform the world as it is into the world they would like it to be." The witch sometimes starts as an outcast. Perhaps they're the odd one out. Perhaps life is a struggle and a war, and they have been pushed into a corner. They then turn to witchcraft out of a combination of curiosity and desperation. Wei Wuxian begins as an already talented magician, but he is also a thorn in other people's sides. He does not honor rules and social graces. He asks dangerous questions.
先生，灵气而气，怨气而气。灵气处于丹符，可以劈山填海，加以利用。这怨气也可以，为何不能加以利用啊？
那我再问问你，你如何保证这些怨气为你所用，而不是戕害他人？
我尚未想到。
He gets involved in situations without considering political consequences. He is also a bit annoying. However, life turns cruel when his family comes under attack from the Wen clan, and his adopted brother, Jiang Cheng, has his golden core forcibly torn out of him. It is revealed later that Wei Wuxian sacrificed his own golden core to give to his brother, the last thing binding him to his former life, before being cast into the burial mounds by the Wens to fend for himself against the vengeful spirits there. Alone, he undergoes a violent initiation into his craft. His journey is not unlike Thomason's in Robert Eggers' The Witch, in which Thomason and her family are cast out of their Puritan community and into the wilderness, where she loses them one by one to dark magic and collective madness. Torn away from everything she knows, she finally submits to a pact with the devil.
Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
Yes. Magical initiation is transformative for sure, but we often underestimate how it requires us to let go of our former selves. For a new witch, newfound power is often thrilling, and they are able to achieve vengeance, vindication, and autonomy. But sometimes their magic is so potent that they become consumed by their own power and unwittingly release mayhem that is catastrophic to both themselves and others. Hence, the witch is associated with a chaotic and sometimes ambiguous morality, capable of both good and bad. Wei Wuxian is able to defeat his enemies with his new magic, but his practice comes with consequences. His unapologetic nature makes him a political liability to his family. Wei Wuxian also tries to save Wenying, one of the Wen clan remnants who is persecuted by the Jin clan, and ends up turning him into a living corpse, an abomination of his former existence, and a vessel for his own magic. and when he is under attack by Jin Zixun, he loses control of Wenying, resulting in the death of his brother-in-law and, indirectly, his sister. When this final loss drives him mad with grief, he launches into a final massacre of the people who were once his allies and peers, before perishing himself. The series adaptation tries to absolve Wei Wuxian of some of the blame, making some of these events the result of other shadowy elements sabotaging him. But the source material makes no such excuses for him. These events are entirely his fault. Wei Wuxian does not have perfect control over his power and is sometimes driven to problematic decisions, and we as the audience must grapple with his moral ambiguity. This can also be taken as a statement of nonconformity in Chinese societies. You can rebel against the status quo in the interest of your own morality, but other people will bear the consequences. Even though Wei Wuxian is not a woman like most fictional witches, he does represent a dark feminine foil to his very masculine-dominated society. Even though his society labels him Yiling Laozu, or the Yiling Patriarch, this title itself is a projection of patriarchal ideas on him and the structure of his new community, even though they are really just a commune of war refugees. The dark feminine archetype essentially represents freedom, the freedom to engage with the inner darkness essential to every human being. To perform magic, Wei Wuxian engages with baneful emotions, dark emotions that his patriarchal society would rather suppress with the tools of war. Like the dark feminine ideal, he can go to a place of death and make it fertile with new life. But without having a way to process the negativity he engages with, Wei Wuxian is often in danger of perpetuating rather than ending toxic cycles, which is where his relationship comes in. Wei Wuxian's closest relationship is with Lan Wangji, a rule-oriented cultivator who lives his life by the books. In the novel, the two have an explicitly romantic relationship. It is also hard not to see the yin and yang symbolism in the way they are often depicted together. In the series, Lan Wangji understands that Wei Wuxian needs a way to put his negative energy to rest after channeling it, and he helps by playing to him on a guqin, a traditional instrument of meditation. Through this relationship, Lan Wangji learns that morality is not always strictly codified in life, and that rebelliousness is sometimes a necessary force. Conversely, Wei Wuxian comes to learn that rules have their place and purpose. He knows when to stay silent and when to stay on the sidelines. His first life is a progression from infamy to persecution suffered by many witches, but he is resurrected and given another chance to achieve this harmony of masculine and feminine attributes. And just as many fictional witches become surrogate parents, like the aunts in Practical Magic, Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji also both represent an alternate model of parenthood. In Chinese culture, young people are often expected to marry and have children that will carry on their family name. Instead, Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji adopt Yuan, a war refugee who eventually becomes the future of the Lan clan. And ultimately, Wei Wuxian does not live out the rest of his days rebelling against his society. Instead, he retreats to live a quiet life with Lan Wangji, away from the politics of the cultivation world. He is content with passing on his invaluable teachings to the next generation of magicians and watching them change the world from the sidelines. In his novel, I Shall Wear Midnight, Terry Pratchett writes, "People need witches. They need the unofficial people who understands the difference between right and wrong, and when right is wrong and when wrong is right. The world needs the people who work around the edges. They need the people who can deal with the little bumps and inconveniences and little problems. A witch is always on the edge, between the light and the dark, good and bad, making choices every day, judging all the time. Everybody needs a witch, but sometimes they just don't know it. Witches do things. You don't have to single-handedly change the system overnight, but you can make people think about it."